The big question is now, who's next for Chris Eubank Jr.? What is next for Chris Eubank Jr.? Does he continue to fight or does he retire? It was quite sad watching Chris Eubank Jr. on Saturday nights. As someone who respects Chris Eubank Jr., but don't particularly like him too much, you have to credit him. He's been in some absolute wars over the years, and he deserves credit for his performance in the first fight. With the boxing match. But on Saturday night in the rematch, he looked a shadow of himself, man. He looked ill. He didn't look right, and that's not taking anything away from Conor Benn. I think Conor Benn was just brilliant, and again, I think he worked on the things that he needed to, in the stuff of stay more calculated, stay more calm and composed, pick your shots, don't swing from flipping Africa, America, Australia. Do you know what I mean? He took his time. But the real question is now, what is next for Chris Eubank Jr.? I think if he's going to continue to fight, he doesn't fight at 160. He can't make that weight anymore. He had to drain himself again with a day or two to go to make that weight. It's well and truly clear he's not fit enough to make those weights anymore. Although looking on boxing, he's still decent enough in the rankings. Chris Eubank Jr. said after the Conor Benn fight, prior to the Conor Benn fight, sorry, his goal was to go for a couple of more big domestic matchups in for the world titles. You talk about your Terence Bud Crawfords, you talk about your Canelos. For me, those fights are gone. Those fighters would eat you up, even at 168. Chris Eubank Jr. can no longer do boxing for 12 rounds. Terence Bud Crawford showed against Saul Canelo Alvarez in July that he absolutely cleanly boxed his head off for 12 rounds. And I personally don't think Chris Eubank Jr. can do it anymore. I don't think he can box for 3 minutes, 12 rounds. Because if I watched the fight back, and obviously I'm in the stadium, so obviously I'm not listening to what the trainers are saying. But Bomac, his trainer, was telling him the right instructions. He wasn't listening. And a couple of interesting things I picked up on was Chris was saying to Bomac, right, let me know when there's a minute to go in each round. That says to me that he's just not got much left in the tank. He hasn't got much left in the tank. I think there's 1 or 2 more fights he could still go for at an English domestic level in Hamza Shiraz. I think that will sell well. 2 Brits going at it. Do that at the O2 Arena or something like that. I still think there's a couple of more fights that he could take. But in terms of becoming world champion, he's never been world champion level. He hasn't. He's always been just that level below, in my opinion. And I'm looking at his last couple of fights. He's had 2 Conor Benn fights. He had the Kamel Sonomita fight, obviously in Saudi last year. And even that was like, come on, man. Like, that was just a tune-up warm-up fight for the Conor Benn fight. I actually had the 2 Liam Smith fights. That second Liam Smith fight was probably the best performance on Chris Eubank Jr.'s career. Maybe you could argue Conor Benn the first fight. Other than that, he's no. And then obviously he lost to Billy Joe Saunders a couple of years ago. So for me, he's never been world champion level, and he never will be, and that's fine. He's 36 years of age. He's got twins on the way. I think you could tell in the post-fight press conference when the reporter asked him, are you going to continue fighting, Chris? And he was like, no, I don't want to answer those questions. And just kind of shut it down. And that's a sign of a fighter that has one step out at the ring, in my opinion. And then again, you look at his dad talking about he wants his son to retire. He wanted his son to retire after the first fight. You're now seeing the repercussions of the wars that Chris Eubank Jr. has been in with. Yes, I think he's produced some good performances of his career. Like I mentioned, the Liam Smith one's probably my personal favourite of Eubank Jr.'s career. Maybe Conor Benn the first fight at Tottenham, right? Those 2, And Conor Benn isn't even world level yet. He's gone up 2 weight divisions. Liam Smith, in my opinion, you know, isn't as good as he once was. You know, he's got 5 losses, I think, on his record. He lost to Aaron McKenna literally in the first fight in the undercard, I'm pretty sure, at Spurs. So, like, what are we doing here? I think it's time for Chris Eubank Jr. to retire, in my opinion. And again, I'm looking at the one, even his natural weight at 168. Like, he's not beating Canelo. He's not beating Crawford. Does he beat Hamza Shiraz? There's even a couple of fighters in that division. You look at Callum Simpson. You look at Caleb Plant. There's a couple of fighters in that division. Does he beat them? Chris Eubank Jr. I mean, you look at the physique and the body of him. I thought he looked the best shape he could possibly be in at the weigh-ins, considering what the rehydration clause and coming down to 160. But for me, nah, I think he's done now. Chris Eubank Jr. Fair play to him. He's made a lot of money. He's had some unbelievable events. He's given me some unbelievable events going to boxing. So, credit to him for that. But I think it's time for Chris Eubank Jr. to retire, in my humble opinion. Again, 36. He's got twins on the way. I think he can still put up some okay performances, like I said, but nah, not at the highest level in terms of becoming world champion, like he said. Nah, not for me. Just not for me. I think he might do one more, but now does he? And he's definitely not going to try and call for that Conor Benn rematch, because I think if he was to go in with a trilogy with Conor Benn, I think Conor Benn he won't see the final bell, in my humble opinion. And you know what? I think I was watching back the broadcast, and I think Carl, Ade, and Tony was all mentioning something really good. You look at Dimitri Bivol, you look at Artur Beterbiev, you look at your Alexander Usyk. Now, I'm not trying to compare Chris Eubank Jr., but you look at these people that are at the tail end of their career, 36, 37, 38, they're having one fight a year because they're leaving themselves enough time to recover and repair their bodies. Do you know what I mean? And I think that maybe that fight might have been a bit too soon for Chris Eubank Jr. Yes, well, he won against Conor Benn in the first fight, but I think that took more out of him than it did. Obviously, Conor Benn, who's the younger, fresher man, but there's no shame in it. I think it's time for Chris Eubank Jr. to retire, but obviously it's up to him. Some boxers just never know when to let go. But smash the like, subscribe to the boxing channel, and I'll take care, and I'll see you very soon on the next video.